Good morning, Pastor Tim. We didn't talk again. Here we go. I hate to say this, but we really are going to have school next Monday, and therefore we will have chapel. I guess that's not true. No class next Monday and no chapel next Monday. We got it right. We got it right this time. What a weekend. Old guys like me have got to slow down a little bit, but it's tough to do that around here. What a weekend. I got to tell you, on Friday afternoon, there was a men's volleyball game in here, and we had a meeting at 1 o'clock, and so we held the meeting up there so we could watch the volleyball game. And they won that game, and then on Friday night, they had another game at 7 o'clock, and we came to that game, and they won again. In fact, they swept all 4 games this weekend. But if that's not enough, later Friday night, I wandered over to Ethington Theater for the opening act of A Midsummer's Night Dream, Shakespeare. And I was nervous about Shakespeare. I didn't get Shakespeare in high school. I didn't get Shakespeare when I was in college. And so here I have another crack at it. And I didn't get half of what went on in that show, but my wife was sitting right next to me, and she explained a lot. She explained a lot of it to me. I can only tell you that if you haven't seen it, next weekend there are 3 more shows. It's fantastic. Michael Carey, congratulations, all your students. They just did a fantastic job with A Midsummer's Night Dream. You'd really, really enjoy it. And if you're not sure about it, just let me know. I'll have my wife sit right next to you. She can explain everything you don't get. And then it kept going. Tennis swept all their games, and swimming keeps sweeping all their meets. And the track and field teams are ranked in the top 10 of the country. And our men's basketball team has won 3 in a row. They play tonight. Our women's basketball team lost the Player of the Year last year, and they came right back this year, and they've only got 2 losses. They're in 2nd place. They play tonight. And I want to make sure I shout out to Emily and all the cheerleaders, because a lot of times they don't get a recognition they deserve. In fact, I just found out, and I know a lot of you are here, a lot of you have been invited to a big competition at the end of March, in which you're going to compete against some of the biggest schools in the country. And so congratulations on that, and good luck in March to you. Baseball is something that's always made me happy. I started playing baseball when I was 4 or 5 years old. It's always made me happy. You know, we had a new baseball coach this year, and this guy, now I played shortstop for the Montgomery Meats in Cincinnati, Ohio, and then I played shortstop for the Milwaukee Lutheran Red Knights. But our new baseball coach, if you follow baseball, played 16 years of professional baseball, 6 in the major leagues. In fact, he started at shortstop for the New York Yankees. That's a big brand. That's a big brand. I asked Andy Stankiewicz, our new baseball coach, and if he knew I was doing this, he would be mad if he would autograph 5 baseballs for me. And I've got them right here. 5 Major League baseballs, and they are autographed by Coach Stankiewicz. Who would like a baseball? If you want a baseball, you have to get up! No, the cannon is gone, man. The cannon is gone. Too many years of pitching batting practice. I have a serious question for you today. I'd like you to think about for a second happiness. What makes you happy? Do the things that make you happy always make you happy? If those things that make you happy, are there ever any disappointments in those things? What's the formula for happiness? It seems so elusive. It seems so difficult. I want to talk about happiness, and I want to talk about the elusiveness of it. I want to talk about Christianity, and I want to use 3 stories to do that. The first one was a story of something that happened just recently. I woke up Sunday morning, and I turned on the news, and it was all over the news. Whitney Houston had died. She had died the day before. She had died on the eve of the Grammy Awards. And she was such a big part of the music scene in this country that for her to die on the eve of the Grammy Awards was difficult enough. but it was around the circumstances of her death that I think caused people to mourn that even more than they would mourn it otherwise. Everything started so good for her, right? If you know her story, and I don't know all the details, but she started singing in her mother's choir. She started singing in church, and it was part of the family, and they discovered that she had this beautiful voice, this powerful voice, singing praises to God. And she must have sat there and heard the gospel message preached Sunday after Sunday, and she probably was part of a youth group, and she probably sang as part of her youth group. And she eventually experienced all this fame, but she had demons, and her demons were drugs. And it was very difficult for her to control that. With all the success that she had a good family, she was raised in the church, and with all that success, she started to do drugs, and they took over her life. And the people who use drugs will tell you, especially people that get addicted to drugs, that in the beginning, it makes you happy. It is something out there that can elevate your mood and make you happy. But eventually, in order to stay happy, you got to have more, because what happens with drugs is when you come down, they disappoint you. A lot of people who quit using drugs because, yes, it makes them happy for a while, it elevates their mood, it makes things around them more enjoyable, but eventually you have to come down. And when you have to come down, that doesn't feel good. Drugs eventually disappoint. They eventually don't make you happy, and so there she ends up at 48 years old with all this success, and her own daughter and her own family dying alone in a bathtub in a hotel room. It's so discouraging that she couldn't find the formula for happiness. And it's interesting that they kept talking about that all day yesterday on the news, and then again this morning. She made so many people happy with her gift, but she couldn't make herself happy. What went wrong? We had another story, a second story that happened about a month ago in Arizona. A lot of you that are young probably aren't going to recognize this name, but some of you who are old like me will. The name is Bill Haywood. Bill Haywood is a native Arizonan, and he lived his life in Arizona, and he was a big part of the Valley. He was a radio broadcaster. He was really good at it. He broadcast for a number of different stations throughout the Valley, throughout his lifetime. His career spanned more than 30 years, more than 3 decades, and he made a lot of people happy. He was very successful. He was popular. He was respected. He built a real nice career for himself. He became fairly wealthy. Had a big house up in Scottsdale. You would see him around the Valley at public events. Interestingly enough, one thing that's difficult for a lot of people to attain, he had. Not only did he have all this success and have all these friends and have all this popularity, he had a great marriage. That's a difficult thing to do. He had a great marriage, and people talked about he and his wife and their love for each other, but Bill wasn't a Christian. And 3 years ago, when the recession hit and things started going south in our country, and especially in Arizona, some of his investments went bad. And he went bankrupt, and he lost his home. He moved into a condominium. His wife got sick. She lost her health. And those things that made the two of them happy all those years as they built their life eventually were gone. There was no more happiness. There weren't games to go to. There weren't things to do. There wasn't a big house to come home to. Financial difficulties made their life more difficult. Her declining health made things more difficult. And so about a month ago, the two of them checked into a Scottsdale hotel room, and they shot each other. They shot themselves and committed suicide. That's a very, very discouraging story. If the two of them, with all their success, couldn't find the formula for happiness, how difficult is it to find? I want to tell you a third story about the Apostle Paul, who life for him looked a lot more like Bill and Whitney early on. Paul was born probably into a very wealthy Jewish family. And he got the best education you could get in those days. Because of his education as an adult, he joined a group called the Pharisees, which was a very respected, prestigious group of professional theologians. But in those days, the theologians had not just theology, but they had political power. They were the ruling class. They had money, they had respect, they had prestige, they had authority, and Paul was right in there with them. He was one of those. Paul was living the life just like Whitney Houston and just like Bill Haywood was living the life. In fact, that privilege was so important to him that as Christianity started to gain momentum in that part of the world, he began persecuting Christians. The Jewish and the Roman authorities didn't want any threats to their authority, to their control, to their prestige. They wanted to keep those things that made them happy in close. And so when Stephen, the martyr, was stoned to death, Paul was standing right there holding everybody's clothes so they could throw the stones harder. He was right there. That's how his life started. The way a lot of us are. Protect what's ours. Protect what's ours so that we can be happy. And of course, at some point, Jesus said, that's enough. That's enough. And while Paul was on the way to Damascus, Jesus came to him in a bright light, and it shocked him, and it knocked him down, and it blinded him, and Jesus said, that's enough. You're going to be mine. And Paul was completely transformed. His life was completely turned upside down. The privilege was gone. The respect was gone. The control was gone. And most of us would think then, the happiness is gone. Paul started out on, the greatest fisher of men of all time, right, Dr. Girelli? Pretty close, the greatest fisher of men of all time. He is turning the world upside down. He had 3 major missionary journeys in which he is transforming people into Christians. He's starting Christian churches, and he's on fire with the gospel. He's been transformed. And one of the things that he did was he wrote letters to all those churches that he started to make sure that they knew the formula. He wanted to make sure they knew the formula. And if you go to the book of Romans is probably the best example of Paul laying out the formula for Christians, which seems so elusive to so many people.